Hello, sweet friends, and welcome back to the Quilter's Candy Shop, where you will find sweet treats for the discerning quilter. Today, we're going to make our quilty fun zippered tote bag. It's a simple pattern that looks great and works up in a flash. I made this one for Valentine's Day, but my girlfriend immediately claimed it for herself, so now I'm going to have to make one for me for Easter. This zippered tote is the perfect size for storing projects in progress, or as a quilt class supply bag, a travel bag, or even as a really cute tote for books, a tablet, or an iPad. There are so many options. I'm sure you'll find a good reason to make up one of these adorable tote bags for yourself. Here's what you'll need to create one of these quilty fun totes from your own fabric. Now, these are the specific sizes you need to duplicate my bag, but really you can make your bag any size that you want. The main section of the tote is this pretty little patchwork section. You can use a mini charm pack, or you can dig into your scraps and cut 42 2.5-inch squares. The center section of the bag, when sewn together, should make two 6.5 by 14.5-inch rectangles. You will also need two 3.5 by 14.5-inch rectangles for the top band, two 5.5 by 14.5-inch rectangles for the bottom band, two 14.5 by 14.5-inch squares for the lining, one 7-inch by 11-inch piece for the inner pocket, and two 3.5 by 21-inch strips for the handles. Oh, and of course, a 16-inch poly zipper. We're going to trim this to 14.5 inches. The fleece and the interfacing pieces are cut the same. For the fleece, I like to use fusible fleece because it prevents shifting as we go through the quilting and sewing steps. But you can use cotton batting scraps if you like. For the interfacing, I like to use Shape Flex. It has a soft and pliable hand, and it doesn't get crunchy like some Pellon interfacings. But any lightweight fusible interfacing you have on hand will be fine. You will need to cut the following amounts from both the fleece and from the interfacing. You're going to need two 14.25-inch by 14.25-inch squares for the body of the bag. You need one 5.25 by 6.75-inch rectangle for the inner pocket, and you'll need two 1.5 by 20.5-inch rectangles for the handles. All right, let's get started. I'm using Poppy's Patchwork by Poppy Cotton. It's a cute little country group that has a real vintage edge with super fun and Eastery colors, and I just think it's adorable. We're going to lay out our squares in two rectangles, 7 across and 3 down. And don't forget, you're going to make two of these rectangles, so you might as well lay them both out at the same time. Okay, I'm just going to take a little time here to spread these all out, and then I'll just start moving the squares around until I get a layout that makes me happy and I like where all the pieces are. So I will be right back. Okay, and here are our two rectangles, 3 down, 7 across, right here. I think that looks cute. Next, we're going to use the fast and fabulous webbing technique we learned last week to chain these together in a heartbeat. I really like this pinning version of webbing, so I'm going to do that with these, starting at the bottom left of our layout. If you've never used chain piecing technique called webbing, check out the video popping up in the corner right here for a step-by-step tutorial. Otherwise, here are the basics. We're going to pre-pin all these pieces together in rows. Look, I love this technique so much I went and bought a whole bunch more pins because My koala pincushion was getting a little thin, so now I've got plenty and I can do a big project with this technique. For this version of webbing, we're going to start on the bottom row and work from left to right. Take the right hand piece and flip it over on top, right sides together, and then pin it. Open that piece up, take the next piece, flip it over, and pin it. Now, you don't have to take any time trying to match up these edges because all we're doing right now is just getting the location of the pieces set. We're just assigning these pairs, which pieces are going to be sewn to which pieces. You do want to make note to pin from the bottom up. So the head of the pin is at the bottom because when it goes through the sewing machine and you've got your feed dogs right here, it's hard to get that pin out. So pin from the bottom up. Okay, we've got one row pinned. We're just going to leave that here. We're going to go up and start on the left again. Flip this over, right sides together, and pin. And you just continue this process, picking up the next piece, flipping it over, pinning it, open it up, and start again with the next piece. And you just work your way all the way across the row. Okay, now that I've got this second row pinned, I just pick it up and put it on top of the bottom row. Let's do one more. So flip it, pin it, then you open it, and you get the next piece. Flip it, pin it, open it, and get the next piece. As long as you are getting your pieces pinned together and you just keep moving left to right, see how quickly it goes? Okay. And then I've got, this is the third row, and it's just going to go right on top of these rows. Now, to save time, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with this second set, and I'm going to stack those right on here. And I will meet you at the sewing machine. So we're just going to start right on the top and take the first square and flip that over, and there's that pin. You bring this up to the sewing machine and take out the pin. And now you're going to, this is where you line up. So before I said don't worry about lining it up because this is where you're going to line up. And what I do is I put this corner together and then that corner together, and then I run it through the machine. Nice 1/4 inch. Now you leave that there, don't separate it, and you go on to the next set of pinned rows, and you flip that back, and there's the pin. Take out the pin, match up the edge and the corners, and run it through. And I'm going to do this whole stack. So there I go. I've flipped back the one, exposed the pin, and here's a, I'll do a little closer up example. So I match up this corner down here with that edge, and see it just slides into place, and then I sew. And this might seem a little awkward at first, but really it's just a matter of muscle training. So once you've done it a couple times, it goes really easy. And I think this is one of the fastest and easiest way to do this. So here I go. I'm going to match up this corner down here, and that one slides into place, and that's it. Okay, we only have 6 rows, so I'm going to do all of them so you can see how it works. Put it up here, remove the pin, line up this bottom corner, and go. Last one, flip it over, there's the pin. Line up the bottom corner. Now, when you get to this end, you want to grab the thread saver or cottontail. Put that through. Now when you take this one off, keep a hold of this with your left hand, and then you're going to slide across here and make sure that you've got every single one of your rows is attached and it all looks good. And in fact, you can pick it up and you can make all those pinned rows lay out there, and then you start back up at the top. So now this whole row kind of moves forward, and now you just take the next set of pins all the way down each of the rows. So I put that up there. So I hope you will give it a try. This is called webbing, and webbing is really just a new name for chain piecing, but chain piecing has become such a generic term, whereas this, you're like making a chain link fence of squares. And notice how much time we're actually saving by not pressing in between each one of these seams or in between each row. We're not going to press until we get down to the next step. So run this through. And taking it with my left hand and following my seam allowance, making sure all my seams are a good 1/4 inch, that I've got all the rows and that everything looks good. Work it all out there. There's the rows. And now we're going to go on to the next one. All right, I'm going to finish this up and I'll show you what it looks like when I get done. Once all the pinned pairs have been sewn, this is what you end up with. It's like a chain link fence of quilt squares. Because we actually have 2 separate sets here, I'm going to cut these apart now so that I do not accidentally sew them together. So there's that and there's that. I'm going to take these to the sewing machine. I'm going to press all the seams for the top row and the bottom row one direction, and then all the seams for the center row the other direction. And then these seams will nest perfectly. I'm going to do that with both sections, and then we'll come right back. And here we are. Oh gosh, they're so cute. But we're going to set them aside for the moment so we can get the other parts of our bag prepped for assembly. We're going to work on the handles next. Take your handle fabric and cut 2 3.5 by 21 inch strips. Press them in half lengthwise, wrong sides together. Then open the strips and turn in and press a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Press both sides and the ends. And then just fold it over again so you can repress that center fold. Okay, next you're just going to open it back up and you're going to use one of the fusible fleece and one of the stabilizers or interfacings. And these are just going to go inside here. So you're going to run it right up against the fold. That's why you want that fold line there. You want it to go right to the fold. And then the seam allowance is going to go over the top like that. And you're going to press that in. Make sure the bumpy side is down. That's the fusible. And you don't want that on your iron. That is for sure. And you can see why we pressed the seam allowance in first, because it's really helpful when you're trying to fuse the interfacing. You're not really fighting that, trying to get that fold in there as well. So that's my pellon side, and then we're going to use the fleece on the other side. And you don't have to do this. You don't have to put the fleece in. It sure makes the handles so much more comfortable to hold. So again, you're going to go right along the fold, putting it in the halfway spot. We're going to fold this over. And fold it over again like this. That way we can manipulate the seam allowance, manipulate the halfway, and press from the fabric side, not on the poly side. And make sure the ends are turned in like that. And then this is where a couple of wonder clips will come in handy. I'll put one halfway down just to help the challenge. And get this end. We're just tucking it under because we're going to top stitch this all the way around, and it's going to close up this whole thing. And this way we don't have to fuss with turning a tube. All right, I'm going to let that cool while I do the other one, and then we'll sew right around the edge and we'll come right back. Okay, and here are our handles. And you can see you just match up the edge when you fold it back over, match up that edge, and then sew about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. And it closes up the open edges and gives it a nice finish. All right, we're going to set these aside, and the next thing we're going to do is prepare our zipper. To prepare our zipper, we're going to use a rotary cutter or a pair of scissors, and we're going to cut off this little stop right here. This is a 16-inch zipper, and it has 2 pulls on it. But we only need 1. You can use 2, I suppose, if you wanted a double zip top, but that's up to you. We're going to just cut these little stops right off. And on this end, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it with my rotary cutter, just like that. And I'm going to throw this away. You can leave these on, but if you run across it when you're sewing with your needle, you will break your needle and potentially damage your machine, at least throw off the timing. So I think it's best to just get rid of them. And put these. Just remember, once you've cut off the little stops at the end, don't be messing around with the zippers because you will just zip that right off the end. Okay, and so now we're going to cut this one at 14.5 right here, and cut this end off right there. All right, so now we have our zipper length ready to go. Grab a couple of coordinating scraps of fabric and cut 2.5 inches square. Then you're just going to fold them in half and press them. Then you're just going to fold in parallel to that fold that you made, another 1/4 inch little seam allowance on both sides, just like this. And you're going to do that with both pieces. So it should look like this. Now your zipper is going to go right in here. Fold this over like that. And we're going to sew on the machine. We're going to top stitch right across, catching both sides, and create the stop that we just took off. And now our zipper is prepped and ready to go. And lastly, for our prep work, we are going to add the inner pocket to our lining. Grab your 7-inch by 11-inch rectangle and fold it in half, wrong sides together, and press that fold so you have a nice edge. Then you're going to open it and add your stabilizer on one side and your fusible fleece on the other. And fuse that in place. I'm just going to flip it over to make sure I get that glue nice and hot so everything is holding together. Perfect. Now we're going to open it up, turn it backwards, and we're going to stitch all the way around. We're going to leave a 3-inch opening right here because we're going to have to turn this right side out. So I like to stick a couple of pins in here to mark the stop and the start so I don't forget. So I'm going to start here, back stitch, come to here, back stitch, leave this open, back stitch, come around to here and back stitch, and then turn it right side out. And there you go. I've stitched all the way around the outside here, and I used more of a 3/8 inch seam allowance instead of a 1/4 inch because I want these to lie really flat on the inside and not get bunched up. So, but you can do a 1/4 inch. I just like it with the 3/8 inch. And now we need to trim these corners at an angle, just cutting off the tips, and then come back and take a little wider triangle off there. Just don't cut into your seam line, and just get some of the bulk out. And then we are going to turn this right side out. And really, it's such a simple corner, you probably can get it poked out with just your fingers. Like that. But if you have a Hera marker, a point turner, a purple thing, whatever, to get those points out, that is sometimes helpful. Get that out. I've even used my scissor tips before. You just want to be careful not to poke through that seam on your points. There you go, look at that. Okay, now we've got that turned, the points look good, and we've got this opening. We're just going to finger press those seam allowances in. It should kind of want to go where you want it to go because of the seam that we've got. Once you've got it where you like it, just take and press it just a little bit more. Get a nice crisp edge. Okay, we're going to leave this opening for a second, and on this top edge where this really beautiful fold is, that's the top of the pocket. So I'm going to take it to the machine. I'm just going to take a nice fat 1/8 inch, not a whole quarter I don't think, but 1/8 inch right across the top there to top stitch it. There it is. I think that looks nice and finished. Now we're going to attach it to the lining. This is my lining fabric, and this is the stabilizer that is 1/4 inch smaller. And we're just going to fuse all of our lining with a little stabilizer. You don't have to do this. You can do the lining just plain, but if you're really using the bag a lot, this just really makes the lining more durable. It keeps it from wrinkling or pulling out of shape. So I really like this. It just gives it a little bit more stability. Okay, when you have that done, just choose one of your lining pieces. It doesn't matter which one, and it doesn't matter which direction. Unless your fabric is a directional fabric, then you want to pay attention to that. You're going to place the pocket's folded edge towards the top of one of your lining pieces, right side up, and try to center it as best as you can. It should be approximately 4 inches from the sides and about 3 inches from the top. And you may want to throw in just a couple of pins just to hold everything in place once you get it placed where you want. And then we're going to top stitch this into place. You're going to back stitch at both ends and then stitch down the pocket on the lining piece and catch all those edges and back stitch back here. And as you come across the bottom, you're going to be closing up this opening that we have left from turning the pocket. So make sure your stitches are close enough to the edge to catch both of those edges and close up that seam, and then come up and back stitch at the top there just to make sure for wear and tear. Once you have your pocket sewn on, we're just going to set both lining pieces aside for now, and we're going to bring back our cute little patchworks and put together the outside of the bag. I have both of my patchworks here. I have both of my top bands right here and both of my bottom bands right here. You're going to add the top and the bottom to the patchwork for both pieces, and then we're going to add the fusible fleece to the back of this unit. All right, and here it is. I've added the top band and the bottom band, and then I just did an extra thing. You don't have to, but I top stitched along this seam, both at the top and the bottom, just to hold the seam allowance nice and flat. And then I went ahead and I added the fusible fleece on the back of each of the sides of the bag. So here's the other one. Looks just the same. So now's the time to add some quick quilting to secure the batting to the front of your bag. You can use a ruler or painter's tape technique to do some cross hatching, or you can do some free motion quilting for something special. I think it looks so cute. I opted for the diagonal on this one, and I'm thinking I might just do some hashtag in this center, but you do whatever you like. Oh, look at that. How cute. This is turning out so great. Well, now it's time to get these handles on the bag. You just make a loop like this. You want to make sure it doesn't get twisted like this or an extra round. You just want to make a nice round loop. And you can divide your bag into thirds and figure out where it goes, but I also found out that it can sit right here, the center of the strap, right on this seam line, and it looks really good there. So I'm going to attach mine here, and I'm going to do that with both clips, Wonder clips, which I'm going to put on both sides like this, and I'm also going to put a pin in right here to keep it from shifting. I bring the end of the strap right down here to where the edge of the patchwork is, because that's sort of a natural line. So see how easy it is to shift even when it's pinned. So that's, I'm gonna do this over. I think it's better to do the clips first, get it nice and secure, and then put the pin in. I'm not putting it down here at the end of the strap. I'm going to put it up here because we're going to sew the boxed X right here that's going to hold the handle on. And here's what we're going to sew at the end of the strap. I usually start by going across the bottom and make one box. That way I know where all the points are going to be. Then you want to make several passes. So I go up to the corner and back, up and back, and then I carry on this line and I go to this corner, go down and back, and then I go across here and back and across and down. That should hold it without ripping out. And with that done, we now have all the parts to assemble our bag. The first thing you're going to want to do is bend your straps down out of the way. And I like to make a little fold in the handle like this. This just makes them the flattest that you can get them. And then I pin it because this is going to be on the inside while we're sewing, and they will get in the way. So we want to have those out of the way. Okay, I will do the same with the other bag. Now, you may have a zipper that only has one pull, and that's fine. Just pull it down to look like this, and then this side will be open. I'm going to have to worry about 2 zipper pulls, but that's fine. The front of the zipper is the side with the pulls. So we want to put the front down. We want the wrong side, that's this side, up. And you're going to just line up this edge along here. And you want this as even as possible. I think that looks pretty even. This is where wonder clips come in. You can pin or clip, but I think the wonder clips are definitely the easiest way to secure this zipper. And so there, I've just matched the edge of the zipper up with the edge of the bag. Next, we're going to take the lining piece that has the pocket and lay it down right on top of the bag like this and confirm that this is the top of the pocket, points towards the top of the bag. And we're just going to flip it over sideways. And you're going to line this up with this edge as well. So you're going to undo the clip and then clip it back together. And now you can see the bag, the zipper, and the lining are all lined up together. If you have a zipper foot for your machine, that is very handy. If you don't have a zipper foot, a 1/4 inch foot will also work to come down and sew right down along this edge. I happen to not have either of those feet for my little Janome gem, and so I am going to have to make a regular foot work, but that's okay. I can do it, and it's not that hard. I'm going to just stitch right along this edge as best as I can all the way down. Now, as you sew, when you get to a pole, you're going to drop your needle in, lift your presser foot, and then reach underneath and move that pole out of the way. Move it past where you've sewn, and then you can continue on. I have 2 of these poles to work around, so lucky me. All right, I'll get this one sewn and I'll bring it right back so you can see what it looks like. Here's what you should have now. If I open this up, you'll see you have the front of your bag, the lining of the bag, and your zipper sticking straight up like that. While we have everything in this position, the next step is critical. We need to get the seam allowance of the lining, the zipper, and the bag front tucked back and stitched down. All right, so what you're going to do is from this side is you're going to pull the seam allowance down towards the bag, but the lining is still going to stay out this direction. So it's going to look like this. And then you're going to run it through your sewing machine and top stitch along here very close to this edge. Number one, it gives a nice finished look, but secondly, it holds that seam allowance down out of the way. And when we have our bag actually constructed, then this seam allowance won't keep poking up and pushing your lining into the path of your zipper, because that's how that gets caught. So it's really important we get that done. Now, don't be too clever. Do not sew it down this way, because when we go to assemble the bag, that's not going to work. So you have to do it like this. Lining out to the side, bag out to the side, zipper flat with the seam allowance from the lining, the zipper, and the front of the bag tucked this way, and top stitch. All right, so do that, and then we will go on to the next step. With that little detail done, now we're going to do the other side. So we're just going to pick this up and set this aside for the moment and get our other bag front. And we already prepped the handle, so that's good. Now add the first unit with the zipper poking straight out and place the bag fronts right side together. And we're going to make sure you've got your zipper open there. Line up these edges and line up the zipper with that top edge just like before. So we have the back bag lining up with the zipper. We're going to pin that. Or use these wonder clips. Just like that. And then we're going to take the additional lining, and now we're putting the lining right sides together. Don't forget, if you have a directional fabric here on your line, make sure it's pointing up. And we're going to slide this right up to here. And it's going to join the bag front and the zipper all lined up across this top edge with the lining, just like that. Just like before. So now you can see the bag, the zipper, and the lining all lined up here, and we're going to use our zipper foot or your 1/4 inch foot, or if you've got to do it, your regular foot, and sew right along here. There you go. You see, that wasn't too bad. So now we're going to turn the bag's parts open. So you have the bag fronts and the linings underneath, like that and like that. And we need to make that same critical top stitch right here as we did on this side. To make sure everything's in the right place, you need to move this lining piece out of the way, just like we did before. So here's the lining for this part is pulled out of the way. The zipper right here and the bag, all of that seam allowance needs to be facing this direction like it is. So now we're going to run that top stitch right along that edge and catch that seam allowance. Okay, and there we go. There is our second top stitch. So this is what your bag should look like now. You've got the 2 fronts and the 2 linings put together. Now we're going to actually make the bag. So make sure first you get your zipper almost all the way open. We're going to use that to turn the bag right side out. Now we're going to match up the 2 outside parts of the bag, lining up the edges and clipping all the way around. And we're going to do the same with the lining. Match up the edges. And clip those right sides together. Now, when it comes to sewing across the zipper here, I know some people trim this back. I don't, because I want to use this little part that's sticking out right here to really line that up perfectly. In this case, I'm going to use a pin because I really want to hold it. So that is the zipper being turned upon itself. I'm going to pin that tab. And when we come down this edge and we're sewing across here, we're going to back stitch a couple times over the top of that zipper because that's where the bulk of the wear and tear is going to be on the bag. So we want that covered. So all the way around, get this side too. So see how handy these tabs are here to line up? That's how we know that the zipper is right in the center. I'm going to put a pin in here on those tabs. Good, and I'll throw a couple more clips in around to make sure everything is nice and secure. Okay, and the last thing we need to leave an opening down here to be able to turn the bag. And I like to leave a big opening because I don't want to have to fuss too much. So I'm going to leave about 7 inches. This is a 14-inch bag, so really I'm just going to go about 3 inches in here and put a pin. That's my marker. And 3 inches in here, and that's my marker on this side. And we're just going to sew one giant rectangle all the way around the bag, starting and ending here. Don't forget some back stitches to hold it secure. Let's get that done, and then we'll turn and flip it and see what we've got. Okay, and here we are, have stitched all the way around. But before we turn this right side out and reveal our darling tote creation, we're going to box our corners for one more professional finishing touch. To do that, we got to reach inside the bag all the way to the bottom. And then with my fingers are on this end and my thumb is on this end, and then I just tuck in under here and bring those points together. And then we're going to flatten out the tote the opposite way. So now we have the seam running right down the center on both sides. So I'm just going to pull those open. All right, and then you flip this open and you make yourself a nice diamond, or it's actually a square, but on point it looks like a diamond. And then we're going to finagle these seam allowances. So the seam allowance wants to go to the left, so we're just going to move the seam allowance to the left. But then when you get to the point, it's got to go to the right, and you want to stack those on top of each other so they will nest just like a regular seam. So this is going to the right, this one's going to the left. And you can see I already marked this, but I'll show you how I did that. You're going to need a ruler that has a diagonal line that goes out to the tip. Sometimes the 45-degree line comes off to the side, but you want it right down to the point. And then you're going to put the diagonal line, the 45-degree, right along the fold. Then you're going to pull this down, and I'm thinking just 1.5 inches. I don't need too big of a boxed corner, but I just want a little something for depth. The 1.5 line, the vertical 1.5 line, is now in line with my seam, and the diagonal line runs with the fold, and the tip actually comes right down to the 1.5 horizontal line. So that's, then you would mark here, which I have already done. And to secure that in place, I'm going to take my Wonder clips and just put one on each side here to hold that. And then we have to do the other side. So I flip this down, flip it over, flip this point back up. There you go. And the seam allowance is now pointing this way, which means this seam allowance has to point this way, and I want to get that matched up underneath so I can feel that it's nested, and do the same thing. We're going to put the 45-degree line right along the fold, and then come down to the 1.5 inch vertical line right on the seam. And with that straight and the diagonal line on the fold, and then you're going to mark it, which of course I already did, and then clip it. Okay, we've got this part done, and now we have to do the same thing on the lining. It's a little bit more complicated because we have this opening, but just pull this tight across here and get this smoothed out. We got this pocket to contend with. We got all the handles are up in there. And we're going to pull these 2 points straight out like this. There we go. And now we're going to do the same process we did on the outside of the bag on the lining, making sure everything's nice and flat and lined up, and then mark the edge, clip it, and sew it. Right, now I will take this to the sewing machine and sew these, and I'll bring it right back. All right, and here you can see I've done all my stitching across the points, and I made a point of back stitching at the stop and start because you don't want those to come apart, because now we are just going to cut this off, leaving about 1/4 inch, maybe even a little kind of a fat quarter. So we're just going to snip that off of the ends here, and this one. There we go. And that's it. Now we reach inside this bag and carefully pull out and flip the bag. And you can see why I like a really nice wide opening. It makes it so easy to turn this. And so we need to poke out our bottoms here. Oh, look, that looks great. This is why you want to make sure that top seam and that bottom seam are lined up so you get that perfect cross right here. Okay, let's check the other one. See how I did? Okay, there it is. Very nice. Good. Pull that. Excellent. So now your bag should look like this. We got our cute bag right here and the lining. The final step is to close this opening at the bottom of the lining. Since this is on the inside of the bag and clear at the bottom, I'm not going to hand stitch this close. I'm just going to do a seam, it's just a small seam along the bottom. The way to get this to line up is roll these edges all the way out and flat, and that will pull your bottom of your bag to look like this because we boxed it. And then you can just tuck under that seam allowance. This one's flat and poked in, so it's just this one has to fold right there. And then you can take your iron and press that fold in. Then when you pick up the bag right here, those two just naturally want to come together. So I'm just going to stick the iron on there one more time, make sure both sides are now folded together. And I'm just going to take this to my sewing machine and sew a straight line right across the very edge, holding those two together. Now, you probably noticed I've been sewing with pink on my machine. And if I were worried about it, I would just change the thread to cream, but I'm not worried about it. I'm going to continue and I'm going to put pink right along there. Nobody is ever going to see it. So I'll just add a few wonder clips on here to keep that in place while I take it to the sewing machine. All right, and here we have it. And there's my little stitch line. And I promise you, once we stick this down inside the bag, like this, no one is ever going to see it because all of your junk is going to be right on top of it. All right, and so we just push those corners of the lining into the corners of the bag. Like that, move that around in there. And there it is. It looks so nice. This bag is fully washable and makes a great crafty gift for a quilt-worthy friend. I think these turned out so cute. I hope you enjoyed our Quilty Fun zippered tote tutorial. You can find all the supplies you need to make these for yourself in our shop at www.thequilterscandyshop.com. That's SHOPPE shop.com. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you like this video. And I have a small favor to ask. Please leave a comment below. It really helps us in the YouTube algorithm. If all you have time to do is drop a heart, a thumbs up, or even a smiley face, that's great. Share and subscribe so you know the next time we post another super cute project like this one. Now, go sew something sweet. Bye!